Hello, 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 hello. Hi, how are you doing today? I hope you're doing wonderful, fabulous, and everything in between. Today I have a video that makes me feel like I'm participating in travel, like I'm participating in the Olympics, like I have experienced every single part of the world, which I haven't. Traveling is a huge part of who I am. I haven't been able to do it in the last couple of years, but I'm manifesting a journey. I'm manifesting a trip, a vacation, a traveling part of my life. So by doing this video, I want to reminisce about some of the places that I have traveled and the books that have accompanied me along the way. So maybe you can kind of get to know me a little bit through books and traveling, and this is going to be a little bit more of a personal video, but I hope something that you'll enjoy with me. So let's talk about my beginning of traveling, some of the first traveling experiences that I had. I traveled all across Canada as a kid. We took 3 weeks, 3 separate summer vacations, I should say, a week each, and traveled to a lot of different provinces in Canada. I love Canada. I don't really have memories of reading in Canada that much, but for the longest time I used to say that Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was one of my favorite places in the entire world. I feel like from the American perspective, a lot of times people don't talk about Canada as a destination, but I really think it's such a beautiful country and I have such positive memories associated with there. During my high school years, we would travel a lot to Florida. My grandmother used to have a place down in Florida, so we would go every spring break and drive down, and that was really my introduction to using books as a companion to traveling. We used to always listen to audiobooks, and that was my first introduction to Eric Larson, who would kind of become a constant in my traveling life, as you'll see later on. But I remember we listened to Devil in the White City, follows H.H. Holmes and the construction of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, using this serial killer as a parallel to this booming industrial time in the United States. We also listened to Dominic Dunn. I don't really know what he was doing before crime writing. Maybe he was always a crime writer, but the book that we listened to was talking about famous Hollywood murders. You had the Menendez brothers, you had O.J. Simpson, and then you also had his daughter, who unfortunately was killed by a boyfriend, and that's kind of Dominic Dunn's introduction into that world. We listened to that at a young age. Ask me why, I don't know. It was available at the library, and so we jumped on it. We listened to Angela's Ashes by Frank McCormack. That is a memoir about growing up in a very impoverished Irish family and subsequently moving to the United States after that, which I've reread. But we spent a lot of time listening to audiobooks going down to Florida. I learned how to walk in Florida, and I went all the way up until I was 18, which is when I graduated high school, or 17, whatever age. So I don't really have physical book memories in Florida, aside from reading A Million Little Pieces by James Frey. Remember how controversial that book was? That is about a young man checking into rehab after being so dependent on alcohol and drugs. It was allegedly a memoir, but there was that famous Oprah interview. She picked it as her book club favorite, and she sits him down and she's like, "Did you lie?"
I want to know where they write.
I think most of what they wrote was pretty accurate, absolutely.
He's like, "Yes." Yes, I did. I remember that book was everywhere, and so I picked it up, and I didn't finish it, but I remember reading that on vacation, poolside, feet up, bottoms of toes, burning. So was I. I was always anxious to burn on vacation, and now I regret that, so put on your sunscreen. So those were kind of like the formative years of me learning how to read and have these stories follow me on vacation. I just feel like my mind is so much more adaptable when I'm exploring new things, exploring new places, so I feel like having a book alongside it is really fantastic. So the travels that I had after that were traveling cross country with my parents. I've been across the United States 3 times now, I believe. I've seen almost all 50 states. I just have Alaska to see, which is fun and cool. I will definitely get to Alaska because I have so many stories and books that I love that are centered around Alaska. So I will get there. It'll just take a little bit of time. So I remember one year we took 2 weeks off and we went out west as far as we could in the United States. And we were definitely listening to audiobooks, but I can't remember the audiobooks that we were listening to. But I remember reading 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. Girl, talk about putting you into a premature midlife crisis. I remember we were driving through Michigan and I would sit behind my dad in the driver's seat, and I can't read in the car. So I would have my head down past the window so I couldn't see out the window, and I would just be curled up into a shell, a little mussel, a little clam. I would just be curled down and I would be reading it. And I just remember sobbing reading that book. What a depressing novel. I remember getting into an absolute rut after reading that book as a child and couldn't understand why somebody would write something so heartbreaking. Just broke my heart. Just sobbed. Ugly sobbed. So after that, I really feel like I had graduated and I was doing my own thing, and then I moved to New York City, and I was so fortunate enough to meet a ton of people from different countries, and I really began my kind of solo traveling. I just was traveling, but I really wasn't reading that time. I made the video, The Books Who Made Me I Am. There was a period of time where I wasn't focusing a lot of my time on reading, so I was just experiencing life, which I think is fine. Enjoying my time throughout the world and really taking these vacations, really, and experiencing and educating myself that way. So it really wasn't much of a reading trip. It was much more of a exploratory journey, and I have a lot of really funny stories with traveling solo and loving it. But talking about vacations, it's time to give your Mac a vacation. And that is why I am so excited to be partnering with Clean My Mac X on today's video. It is an app to clean, maintain, and optimize your Mac. Free up space on your MacBook, iMac, and even on hard drives. I am lucky to be able to work remotely now doing YouTube, which thank you so much for allowing me to do that. I'm using my Mac a lot. It is constantly running a little hot, so it's nice to know that I have an app that is able to check my battery life, to check my CPUs, and to check when I might need to restart my computer. I didn't even know that that was something that I had to do on my Mac, but with Clean My Mac and its very easy to understand interface and main menu, I was able to see that maybe it was time. You can also very easily check the longevity of your battery and see how many charge cycles are left. That is a thing. You do have an allotted amount of charge cycles, and it's very fun to see how many I have left and how I should kind of conserve my battery. It's also very important for me as I'm traveling around or I'm in different locations to check the speed test on Wi-Fi, to just be able to have that pretty immediately without having to outsource it from a different place. I like knowing that I have it all within the Clean My Mac X interface. I was also able to save about 7 gigabytes of storage just by using their cleaning scanning system. Get rid of them. Bye-bye. You know I love cleaning. This is cleaning for my Mac. So as I am talking about these vacations and places that I have traveled, give your Mac a little bit of a vacation. My Mac X's menu app monitors your Mac's health while you are soaking up the rays, having a good time, exploring new places. So if you would like to try Clean My Mac X, you can click the link in my bio and use my code Wallace for 20% off any subscription. Give a little love to the thing that works so hard for you so that you can relax. Okay, Queen. So where were we? We were talking about independent trips that I was taking. Well, that kind of stopped because I met my husband, Oleg, and I was starting to be able to travel as a couple, which is very important. You don't realize how important it is to have a travel companion until you start to travel together. Also, through meeting my stunningly gorgeous husband, Oleg, I had the confidence to start my YouTube channel. So I started to take reading a little bit more seriously. So when I was going on these trips, I was making sure that I was bringing books along with me. And a lot of them started to be documented. Girl, I can't remember every single one, but I tried to kind of think about the ones that stuck out to me. So I remember going on a trip to Florida and I was able to see Ernest Hemingway's house. So I read Ernest Hemingway again, The Old Man and the Sea, which I love. I know it's kind of a contentious book. Some people think it's a little bit boring, but I do love just that sparse storytelling of a man going and trying to persevere in the most disturbing and not unsettling, but combative forces against him. I also remember reading Sarah Kane's plays in Florida because I feel like that's only the safest place to read it. Such a dark, dank, and depressing play, you need a little bit of sunshine to kind of keep you moving on that way. Rhymed and I didn't even realize it. Also went cross country again as a group. This time it was 4 people cross country. I feel like I had a book with me, but I don't think I was reading really. But I remember this is when I bought The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. I also listened to In the Garden of the Beast by Erik Larson, but I don't think I was really actively sitting and reading during that road trip. I also went on a second cross-country road trip, this time just Oleg and I. I documented a lot of that. You can see some of those videos on my channel. Again, I didn't really read that much because I was driving. I'm sorry. You drive for 8 hours a day and tell me if you're motivated to just, sit even more while reading. You want to get out and walk, baby. Again, I was listening to a lot of audiobooks on that trip. So I remember listening to another Erik Larson, Dead Wake, which I think is one of my favorites of his. Devil in the White City will always have a very special place in my heart, but Dead Wake was a fantastic novel, or book about the sinking of the Lusitania and the subsequent involvement of America in the World War. In the Twilight World, I also listened to by Werner Herzog, which was a very interesting novel. It is a true story told through Herzog's lens of a Japanese fighter refusing to believe that the war was over and just committing himself to living in the forest for 26 years, I think, which is marvelous and excruciating at the same time. I do remember buying books on that trip, and I did do a haul video, but did I check it out to see which ones I bought? No. So I'm going off of the ones that stuck out in my head. I remember purchasing Zitkala Shah, American Indian Stories. She is a Sioux writer and activist, and it's just about her being a Sioux member within the United States and the kind of trying to reclaim their identity. Then I also purchased White Tiger. I remember buying that in Montana. All these books I bought in Montana. We had a little bit of time to breathe and live in Montana, so I figured that I would pick up books. I also read Passing by Nella Larson in Georgia. I remember sitting by a campfire and reading that. And that's a great little book. I really enjoyed that book. That was definitely a good one. So, okay, we keep moving because you know what? I think it helps me to stay inspired. And I just like moving around. This is all, I realize, a little bit out of order, and I apologize, but I'm just trying to group them all together. In 2021, I went to Ukraine for 2 months. My husband, Oleg, is Ukrainian, so we were visiting his home. Beautiful place. I have a lot of videos about that I have since archived, and I am now releasing them onto my Patreon, so if you want to check that out, you can check it out on my Patreon. Around this time, I was also getting really involved with trying to make my YouTube channel work, trying to figure out what was the best way to document myself, incorporating books. So I was heavily focusing on reading at this time. I also had a lot of time to just walk around, listen to audiobooks, and sit in parks and read, so I was definitely taking advantage of that. In Ukraine, I read The Orphanage by Sergei Zhadan, which is an amazing book talking about 2014 revolution in Ukraine. I also read Disobey by Frederic Gros, which was a little bit boring, but it's all about the philosophical look into disobedience within people. I also read Snowflake by Louise Nealon, which is a book I gave 5 stars to at the time. I remember being very enchanted by it, but I don't really remember much about it. I remember it being a young Irish girl and her mother had a lot of mental health complications and she was just kind of looking after her. Basically, I remember that. Also read Unicorn, about a beautiful drag story, baby, which we love. I also read Inseparable by Simone de Beauvoir, which I thought was horrible, really boring, not my thing, about two young girls embarking on a friendship that might be a relationship, but maybe not. I think it was a disservice to publish that a little bit too late. I read The Divorce by Caesar Araya. I read The Great Gatsby. I also read How Much Land Does a Man Need by Lev Tolstoy. I was fully consumed, and I have a lot of really positive memories of that trip and the books that I read alongside that. So that's kind of where I've been in the last couple of years in time in my life. I've traveled a lot, and I'm really thankful for being able to travel. A lot of people asked me, how are you able to travel? And I do it very, very cheaply. I have friends basically everywhere that I travel, and that has been a continuation of that through California. I spent a lot of time in California. I've made a lot of videos about that. That's why I read Black Swans. That's why I read East of Eden. More recently, I read The Informers by Bret Easton Ellis there. And now I would say my outlook with traveling and reading is trying to find a book to accompany the place that I'm traveling to. I find that that's kind of the best instrument to find a book that feels like it's perfect and really kind of puts me in that headspace. And again, how I travel, having friends in a lot of places, and just being really, I buy a lot of groceries wherever I travel. But traveling is so important. I feel like just living in New York City, I'm able to travel through the streets and all the people that I meet. So I'm always very fortunate and thankful when I'm able to travel and have those experiences, because I think it's very on par with reading and learning about a place, learning about people, learning about customs and culture. I think it helps you. It really helps you. So that was very long-winded and hopefully not too convoluted. Hopefully you were able to kind of follow along, and hopefully the pictures and videos that I add help to accompany the space. Anyway, you guys are wonderful. You're fabulous. Let me know where you've traveled to, what's your favorite place that you've been to, what books you've read along the way, and if I have any other traveling books that I remember, any places that I went to that I totally forgot about, I'll hopefully add them in at some time.